It is 6:31 according to my computer. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome. This is the meeting of the Winooski Development Review Board. My name is Kevin Lumpkin. I'm the chair. With me in person and via Zoom is Matt Basowitz, our vice chair. We've got members of the board, Elsie Goodrich, Aaron Guyette, David Weisberger. We've got 5 of us tonight, and Caitlin Hayes just in time to be introduced.
Kevin, 1 second. I'm gonna hit record here quick, so it's
great. Well,
give us that here a moment. Sorry to interrupt.
That
recording in progress.
Can I just ask a question before? Do people feel more comfortable if I wear a mask?
It's up to you.
Not required, up to you. I would ask your immediate neighbors. We're far enough away. Cool. All right. So we've called the meeting to order. Before we started recording, I introduced the members of the DRB. Next item is changes to the agenda. Anyone have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. The next item is public comment. This is a section required in every public meeting in the state of Vermont. It's not for comment on the actual items we're going to hear tonight. It's more general thoughts about the city, about the world. Anybody have any public comment? Hearing none. Next item is to approve the previous meeting minutes. These were circulated in your packets. Do I hear a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes?
I'll move to approve those.
Got a motion, a second?
I'll second.
Great, got 2 seconds. Let's call it Elsie, seconded for the official record. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
We can't see the internet people
Oh, yeah.
with this
Can you
view.
switch
Can
that
we
over
switch to
the-
gallery mode?
They both raised their hands though, Kevin.
Great, both raised their hand. I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here, but the minutes are adopted. Let's move on. We've got one substantive item for hearing tonight. It's conditional use review, and part of that is a waiver request, right? So we're hearing both the request for conditional use approval and the request for a waiver, 62 Union Street. I understand the owner has sent, the applicant has sent a representative. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us what this is all about?
Yes, hi, I'm Greg Dixon from Krebs and Lansing Consulting Engineers. I'm the engineer on behalf of 62 Union Street LLC. Eric, I think if we could get the site plan up.
Yep. Do you expect Connor to say anything? He's on. I can bring him over as a friend.
He may. I'm not sure.
Can I pause you right there? I forgot to swear you in. So
Yes.
Everybody who intends to give testimony tonight or might give testimony tonight, go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Great. Go for it.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen here with the site plan.
So we can start with this one. This is our existing condition plan. So we went out and surveyed the property. We have not performed a boundary survey on it yet, but did find a lot of evidence of property corners. But we surveyed it for coverage numbers and to sort of see what is out there existing right now. What is existing right now is in the main building is 2 dwelling units, so basically 2 apartments. And then in the back, as you can see, there's an existing, I think it's a 3-bay garage. That garage is in relatively rough shape, and so that will kind of be what we're discussing today. If you could pop to the site plan. As you can see, not a whole lot. This is actually the proposed site plan. As far as buildings go, not a whole lot has changed. We plan to use the exact same foundation as the existing garage for the building itself. It'll be a detached cottage. I think it's just under 1,000 square foot of livable space. I think something like 990. It will be a 3-bedroom apartment unit, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. And with this, we will also be bringing the site plan under a little bit more compliance with some of the other components of town regulation, mostly being coverage numbers. So this project was already over 50% coverage. And so as a way to do this project, we're actually going to remove a bunch of impervious surface up there in order to get back under the 50% threshold, or actually just right at it. As you can see in green, those are the areas that we plan on kind of revegetating and then reorganizing the parking lot to get as many parking spaces as we can. Even I think we're required 5, and right now with the 2 bays, we're proposing 7. So that is the basic gist of what our proposal is. As you mentioned before, there are waivers we're requesting. The waivers we're requesting are to basically use the existing slab foundation for the building. It is already within the setback. There's 5-foot setbacks for both rear and side yard, and that is already within 2.5 feet of that. We plan to use the exact same foundation footprint and just come straight up from there. So that is the waiver that we're requesting, is to have the ability to use basically the same footprint of the building that's already out there.
Let me focus you in on one of the criteria for the waiver that I suspect is going to be the most challenging for you. So the first criterion, it says, in granting a waiver under this section, the DRB shall find, based on clear and convincing evidence of a specific need and circumstance, that, among other things, no reasonable alternative exists for siting the structure, addition, or improvement outside the required setback area. So tell us a little bit about why a reasonable alternative wouldn't be something like make it smaller, move the foundation, pour a new foundation, get rid of this foundation, anything in that area.
So I think the basis of the reasoning for using the existing foundation is to save money. And to use that money in different places, like we're saying, to upgrade some of the parking areas, bring that all up to code, also have the ability to possibly add privacy fencing as well as vegetation during that, and also some changes along the roadway. If we are not allowed to use the existing foundation, we will have to go back to the drawing board. I'm not sure the applicant is interested in doing anything, and so it would basically stay as a derelict garage in the corner of this property. So this is sort of a way for them to actually make something nice out of something that is not nice, and that's why we're requesting it.
So can you give me, just in assessing the reasonableness, if one were to say, well, you know, you're within the setback, you could site it somewhere else, you could, you know, move that foundation somehow or pour around it, you can tell that I don't know a lot about construction stuff. So give me an estimate of how much of a pain and how expensive that would be.
I mean, they just push their numbers and it's not in their pro forma, basically. So it doesn't work for what they want to do with the property at this time. So I can't really give you an exact number. The reasoning that we can't just like shrink it on the existing foundation is because foundations are set up to have support areas, and then the interiors are normally just slabs. So if you kind of offset where loads are on a concrete structure, you're not actually going to be able to support a building. So the foundation needs to have the walls where the walls are intended to go to have the force go down in the appropriate location. So we can't just kind of, I know that was an idea originally that we just sort of shift, the slab would stay in place, but we kind of shift the building on top of the slab, but that is not doable. The only thing that would be doable, as you were mentioning, is tear it all down, rip out the foundation, and then pour a new foundation. And that is not worth the applicant's time and money.
So, sorry.
Yeah, and I can jump.
Connor Duffy,
Yeah.
the owner, or one of the owners, is on Zoom as well and is looking to say a few words as well here.
Great.
Yeah, and appreciate everyone being here tonight and looking at this project. So we bought the building in December of 2020, and the existing building, while it's a beautiful 1920s building, it was in rough shape too. So we're really happy to bring the existing 2-unit building up to code and get it rented. And the garage, as we've kind of pointed out, is in rough shape, and the existing footprint is there, and the way that we've looked at this and tried to price it out, removing the entire foundation and completely reconstructing, the slab along with all the support structures is going to be expensive, and I don't have the exact numbers because we haven't priced it out, because we wanted to have this conversation first. But, unfortunately, just because of the way the building's situated, if it becomes cost prohibitive to not only demolish but reconstruct that foundation, it's probably not going to make sense for us to do. And in that event, this building, it's not in great shape. So we were hoping to really want to improve this entire, both units, get them rented, provide some additional units for the town, and we want to have something that we're proud of. We spent a lot of time on the design. We think it matches with the existing building, but not being able to use the footprint that is in place, I think we'd run into cost issues. And as I'm sure everyone on the call is aware, construction costs are going up, and probably not seeing them come down anytime soon. So that's really where we're coming from, requesting a setback.
Yeah.
And I think the cost savings also is apparent in what they plan to do with the building. If you wanted to bring up the architectural plans for the building, it is a very attractive building that they plan to put on this existing foundation. And I again, just trying to bring up the positive aspects of being able to use that foundation is that you get a better product at the end of the day.
Let me take one more swing at this reasonableness criterion. Would it be fair to say that it's more than a couple $1,000 to rip out this foundation and pour a new one?
100.
Oh, definitely, yes, definitely. Tens of thousands, I would say.
Have you,
It's going to be major, yeah.
excuse me,
Go for it.
have you consulted with a structural engineer? Would it be possible to slice off 5 feet from one end and pour it on the other and use the remainder of the slab?
So the problem there is the existing foundation walls that are above the slab could be reused to build the building to have the proper structural support. But if we were to move away from the existing foundation walls, it wouldn't make any sense because you'd be basically, you can't support the building on the slab. So you'd have to start over. If we can't use those existing foundation walls as support, then you really have to completely redo the entire foundation because it just wouldn't work. So we have looked into, what it would require. But if we can't use them, then
Structural engineer? I mean, is the foundation adequate that's there? Do you have any evidence that it's adequate for the new building?
so that'll be once we start the process of knocking it down to see what we're actually dealing with. So we'll need to have them come in and analyze the foundation once it's clear. I mean, we can get them to take a look now, but through the process of demolition, it's hard to see what we're going to run into.
Yeah, so, Eric, question for you. What happens if we approve an application like this, the applicant moves forward in good faith, takes down the existing structure, and the foundation is just more rough than expected, can't make it work, and they decide not to move forward? Is that fine? They can just tear that down whenever they want? Don't need a permit or anything?
They would need to get a demolition permit, but yes, there would be nothing. So demolition of the structure is not contingent on your approval. They can go
So
out and
they
tear
could
that
do
down
that
right now
anyway.
if they wanted. Yes.
Okay.
It's just the reconstruction on the site that is what you all are discussing tonight.
Got it.
And it looks like there is an attendee with a hand up. I'm not sure if this is Andrew Gill or not. If that is you, Andrew, if you could just note that in the chat, please.
Okay, so we're still on the applicant's presentation. I interrupted you. If you have anything else to convey about the project, or if any other DRB members have questions, now's the time.
No, I think the only other thing I was going to point out is that we're also intending to widen the driveway access. Right now, it's maybe 9.5 feet, which is a little tight, and so we're going to try to jump it to 12 feet in order to just have better passage back there. And there's also a retaining wall that's kind of on the western side of the existing building, eastern side of the driveway right now that's kind of falling apart. And we're also going to fix that up and in general bring the site up to a little bit nicer stuff.
Other questions from folks in the DRB, folks online? Matt?
I have one, and it's just because I've been kind of Google mapping, street viewing the situation while you've been describing it. And I see a couple of very intrusive trees. One in particular appears to be between what looks like a shed at the neighboring property and the one and your existing garage there. I'm assuming that tree is going to have to come down. And have you spoken with the neighbors about possible impacts on their property as a result of that?
Don't exactly know what tree you're talking about. We did locate all the trees, so they would be on the site plan if you wanted to bring that back up again.
The picture from Street View was October of last year, and it's right between the shed at 70 Union and your garage at 62.
So there is a 20-inch box elder that's actually on the neighboring property, on the western property. So that would not be coming down. No.
Okay. I see it leaning significantly over your garage, which is why I just have concerns about neighbor impact on this project.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd have to reach out to the neighbor about maybe limbing some of the sections, but the base of the tree itself is either on the property line and or on the neighboring property. So we would definitely have to work with that neighbor to do anything about that tree.
Okay.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Gill, one of the other owners. I just hopped on the call. I just had a little bit more. Had texted me that there was some stuff coming up about the construction of the slab and stuff, and I thought I could potentially help speak to some of that. I think that when I had read the report, the staff report for the hearing, and I think it said that there would be a specific need or circumstance that would exist that would say that there is no reasonable alternative siting of the building. Our take on it was that the existing foundation is the specific need or circumstance that exists. And, it would be unreasonable to sort of relocate it. It's a good foundation. To the question, we have inspected it. The slab is in great shape. The walls are in great shape. There's no cracks. There's no evident deterioration. That's a CMU foundation currently supporting a 2-story structure. 2-story structure is planned to replace it. And so there's really no sign that the foundation's derelict or damaged in any way, or that it couldn't support the new structure. And so our overwhelming sort of feeling is that it's going to work. To the question of impacts to the neighbors, I think reusing the existing foundation allows us to build the new unit without taking that tree down. Versus digging the foundation up, putting a new foundation in, even if we were 5 feet from the property line, which I think is the setback, that would hurt the root structure of that tree and potentially cause more damage. Similar with, all of the other trees surrounding the building. It's sort of a less invasive process for everybody to not have to excavate. And so that was, also part of the overall concern. And in terms of the cost of the re-excavation, it's probably in the $25,000 to $35,000 range to pour a new foundation, excavate, put in footing drains, tie everything in, and get everything, built. So it is a substantial cost. Typically your site work and foundation is 15 to 20% of the cost of the entire building process. And, here, that's no different. So we're trying to sort of reinvest that in the site rather than in the foundation by reusing.
Great.
And certainly to the question of, what would happen if we got into the project, had a permit to build this, demolished the garage, and found the foundation to be unsuitable, I think we would proceed and build the thing and have to figure it out. We're not going to get that far into the process and abandon it. That's just not, a viable option. So, if we did proceed with a permit on this project, we would be obligated to complete it, and we'd be comfortable with that.
Great. So thanks for that information. Other folks have questions from the DRB, including the folks online. We can't see you people online yet till we go back to gallery mode. I want to say, Matt had a question. Matt, Caitlin, you good?
Actually, excuse me, thanks, man. I do have one question, or maybe two. So what is the height of the current garage right now, and what is the height of the proposed new structure?
I don't know what the height of the current garage is right now, but I know it meets the current standards, and so will the new structure.
Okay, because I guess I'm just wondering if we're thinking about, having a dwelling unit that's within the setbacks that, I understand that there's not going to be windows on the back of the property, but it's just, if it is going to be substantially taller, it's just something I think that we would be interested in knowing. And my other question was, so for the comment that was just made, it sounds like if the structure is taken down and the foundation is not usable, that the project will still move forward regardless. So I feel like we just heard two different statements about that.
Yeah, choosing to proceed and to spend that money and being in the middle of the project and having it forced upon you, I don't think are the same. So I guess what I was saying is that if we move forward in good faith to reuse the foundation and it works out that it's impossible, we're not going to be just leaving a hole in the ground like the mall downtown. We have the funds to complete the project. We might not choose to enter the project knowing that expense was there. If that makes sense. I don't know if that is clear or not, but it'd be a lot harder to finance the project. The budget would be substantially higher. It might or might not pan out, and it would just be a different financial commitment that I think we can handle if it's forced upon us, but it's not necessarily the choice that we would make right out of the gate, if that makes sense. And
it does make sense. I do feel like that we just heard from your engineer that if the project would not move forward because it would be too expensive. So just wanting to, that's good to hear though. So I'm all set with my questions.
the other question to the height, the existing building is 2 stories for about a third of the structure with a gable roof, and then the other 2/3 of the structure are 1 story with a peaked roof. So the height of the proposed structure is equivalent to the current height of the building. Definitely in the third that's already 2 stories. And so like proportionally, I think they're similar. We could get you that information if it's helpful. But it's currently a 2-story structure with a gable roof on part of it, and a 2-story structure is proposed. The roof actually is flatter in the proposed structure because it's more of a modern pitch. And so it's sort of more in keeping with the overall height of the current building, even though it's 2 stories, because the current roof, peaks like this, and ours is more.
I actually think the height is on the architectural plans of the proposed building.
I could chime in. I drove by on the way here. It seems what's there now is like 1.5 stories on the gabled part. The renderings make this feel like it's going to be quite a bit taller, even if just in feel. This is a full 2 stories, and that's really not what's there now. You've got a slope roof sloping towards the front of the house for 2/3 of it, and then a gable on the 1/3, like you say. But it doesn't have a full wall at that gable. It's like a knee wall. So this just feels taller to me, in my impression, just from driving by.
So just for clarification, from the first floor ground on this mark line here to the bearing plate line at this point is just over 18 feet on this plan. So then there's another 4 or 5 feet above it here, so about 24 feet or so tall, roughly. The maximum height for an accessory structure in this zoning district is 35 feet, just for reference. So this is within the standards.
So Eric, can I chime in, sort of follow up on that with a question for you? I think some definition questions.
Sure.
6.8 that they quote says the waiver can be granted to allow for additions or improvements to a pre-existing non-conforming structure. And I couldn't find a definition for improvement, but would we consider this is basically a complete tear down and a rebuild and improvement? It's certainly not an addition.
I think in this case, we'd be looking at it from the perspective of granting a waiver for relief from the setbacks in order to build the structure.
It'd be a new structure.
Yes, correct.
A new structure, a new non-conforming structure that we'd be allowing.
It would be, so if they were to just be repairing the existing garage, I think we'd be looking at it differently, because it's, the garage structure exists. In this case, they want to remove the garage structure, so they would need the waiver to the setbacks, because willfully taking the building down would require them to meet the existing standards, which would mean that it would need to be within, or the foundation would need to be outside of the setbacks. But that's why they're requesting the waiver, so that they can reuse, they can do both. They can take the existing structure down, but reuse the slab that is located within the setbacks.
So it's like the axe that's had its head replaced twice and its handle replaced 3 times. I mean, is it the same non-existing structure?
It would be, in this case, no, because if you grant the waiver, then it's basically a permitted structure then. The waiver removes that nonconformity because you're granting the relief that they're requesting. So you're establishing, if you grant the waiver, you'd be establishing a new setback for this particular structure. So it would be then conforming with the regulations, in essence.
Which sounds like it's against the goals of the city from the other part that I read. It says, it's the goal of the city of Winooski that nonconformity shall over time cease to exist, become conforming, or at a minimum continue to be used in a manner that does not increase their degree of nonconformity.
Well, it would meet that last standard.
Yeah, and I think I'd contend that we're not increasing the level of nonconformity.
So that's my other question. Is that a valid assertion, would you say, Eric, that the degree of nonconformity is not increased here? Or is that subjective? Is that something we have to...
I think that's...
Well, the degree of nonconformity is 2.5 feet on each boundary.
But it's got a full second story over parts. Well, I guess those parts aren't out of the boundary.
The setbacks don't care about the other dimensions, though.
Right.
So it cares about the height, though, right?
The height was never unconforming, and it will continue to not be unconforming. So it's around 18 to 20 feet now. It'll be a little bit taller, but it'll still be under 35 feet.
Correct. The height is not in question. The existing structure and the proposed structure both conform to the height, the maximum height of the district. It's the location of the building. So to answer your previous question, by using the existing slab, they would not be increasing the degree of nonconformity in this case if you were to grant the waiver. Now, if they were looking to go into the setbacks further, then that would be an increase of the nonconformity.
Well, what about the overhang on the front?
So on this particular elevation, would be interior to the property. So the side overhangs, there is a in the definitions, it does indicate that, and I believe I wrote this up in the memo. There is an allowance.
The overhang of the second. If you go to the other elevation, the overhang of the second floor over that garage door is new. Yeah, right there on the right-hand side of that top drawing.
This one.
That's in.
Nope. The building itself that's overhanging the foundation. It's the second
Oh,
floor
I see,
sticks
this here,
out. Yeah.
this bump out.
So there's a little 2.5-foot sliver of that that's now what it wasn't there before.
And that's gonna be interior to the site? So it's not on it's basically not on one of the side boundaries.
He's saying at the corner it is.
The corner is, yeah.
So we might have to offset that corner 2.5 feet.
I mean, that's nitpicky. I don't.
I thought it was only the foundation that those requirements, but if that is a judgment of the board, I'm sure we'd be able to offset that overhang 2.5 feet, and it'd be a weird kind of kitty corner in the apartment, and we'd probably go from 990 to 987.5, but that is possible. We can do that.
And then, I guess my last question, Eric, is will this building as an apartment building need to have a state permit? Will this be governed by the building
It
code?
would, yes, yes, because it'll be considered a public building. It would need state building permits.
So I have some concern about the proximity of this building to the shed next door. The code typically requires walls to be fire rated when you have a building that close to the other one. And I see that you have windows on that wall that are basically looking right into that existing shed as well.
The existing.
Well, I guess that's a garage, right? That's a garage space on the first floor.
Yeah. So that there wouldn't be any I don't know if he has that. It would be
If you
the
go down, Eric,
the
to the
western
bottom
elevation.
drawings. You've
Yep,
got
so
two little windows there.
There's no windows on. We attempted to have no windows on there would be, so it's that western elevation. There's 2 windows in the garage bay and 2 up high.
Somebody else is in charge of enforcing that code, right? Because I don't know.
Correct, that would be addressed with the
Fire
building
safety.
codes.
Absolutely, that's just a comment for you to be aware of.
Just want to make sure. 'Cause I did not study about that.
Yeah, no, we'd have to apply for that permit. We'd also have to get a water and wastewater permit from the state.
Eric, I just have one more question, and this is just maybe a definition thing. Is there a minimum size that a room can be to be considered a bedroom?
The city does have in our municipal code, it does have minimum housing standards, and it does talk about the minimum size for a bedroom. I believe, and I'd have to look specifically, but I believe it's listed at 70 square feet to qualify as a bedroom. But it also has information on the ceiling height for that space, what you would need to have as far as kitchen amenities for it to be considered a place where you could prepare food and things of that nature. So we do have minimum housing standards in the municipal code.
Okay, thank you.
And there is architectural floor plans above and also in the packets. I think most of the bedrooms are over that 70 foot. They're decent. It's a cozy apartment, but it's
1,000 feet for a 3-bedroom. Yeah.
Sorry, you keep popping up. Have you given any thought to how you're going to insulate the living space underneath the underslab insulation, if you maintain that slab?
insulate, so.
So the energy code, which you bring up in your letter saying that this building is going to be much more energy efficient, the energy
Yep.
code now requires that you have insulation under your slabs for any living spaces. But that's not going to be possible if you,
Yeah, I don't think this slab's gonna sit so I don't think that bottom floor is gonna sit directly on the slab, so I think there'll be
Building
sufficient
up.
room to put in some insulation.
got it.
I think to the question, I'm not 100% sure what the specific requirements of the energy code are for this particular project. I believe it's just the base energy code. There's a checklist in the code that you can use, so you can pull points from various different areas. Maybe I think it often is the case that that's something that you can do things to offset things that you can't do. We will 100% be complying with the code. We'll fill out the RBES certificate. We'll, file it with the zoning administrator, record it. I would say that if we're not able to insulate underneath the slab, We can also insulate the exterior of the foundation, so we could excavate the front and side and apply insulation to the exterior side before backfilling. Also, there might be ways within the code to provide for offsets, by increasing the thickness of the wall insulation, or the roofing insulation, or using zip bar sheathing, or having some sort of exterior seamless insulation, something like that. So we would look to try and avoid having to insulate under the slab. I think if it were a requirement, we would do it on the exterior. So we would excavate and apply exterior foam insulation.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions from folks on the DRB?
I'm wondering about the driveway. The width of the driveway, 12 feet seems like a lot. And I believe that also requires DRB approval, right, for encroachment into the setback of the driveway?
That's a good question. I think this came up in a previous discussion. I know there is an allowance for a shared driveway to encroach into the setback, but I believe that's for two adjacent properties. So I think, and at least I thought that I included information on the driveway encroachment in my memo about the waiver as well. If not, I think that's where I was looking to have the DRB make some comment on the driveway encroachment as part of the waiver as well.
Yeah,
So
I think section 4.2D access where it talks about that. But I mean, 12 feet is a lot for a driveway, right? And you've also got the trees there that are between the two parcels. And it looks like it's on the neighboring parcel, those box elders. I think you'd be into the tree roots because it's kind of humped up next to the existing driveway.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning for the driveway was to give better access for emergency vehicles or something like along those lines was my thought process. If that is a worry of the DRB, we can definitely remove that. It was more just to provide, I think 10 feet's a little tight for this many cars back in there, and then there'll be the building itself that if access needed to happen, it would be better to have a larger driveway, and that was the reasoning for it. But
I don't disagree with the reasoning, but the trees that are there, I don't know. I guess you'd have to have permission from the neighbor.
we're not really changing the grades all that much. I guess there is a hump right in the middle of it, and maybe we could even bring the grade of the driveway up a little bit so it wouldn't be as much of a cut into that hump. The other thing we could look at doing is pushing back the wall on the eastern side closer to the existing building and maybe making up a little bit more room on that side.
Have you coordinated with emergency services to find out what they need?
I reached out and nobody got back to me.
I hope not on the emergency line.
No.
Any other questions from folks on the DRB?
So is there only cutting, as a follow-up to that, is there only cutting of existing pavement, or is it all gonna be repaved? What's the,
I think just with how much pavement is changing, it'll at least need to be resurfaced to be a consistent, one consistent driveway, but I don't think we've really figured out exactly how we're going to do that. The driveway out there right now is paved, and I don't know if it's in great condition or not, but we'd probably try to salvage as much of it as possible, again, to save costs on construction.
All right.
I don't want to deal too much in hypotheticals, but Eric, is it possible that if we were to approve this, it would be contingent on the fact that this slab is functional as is to go forward, and that if it did have to be torn up and rebored, that would not be allowed, that if it had to be redone and they were still interested in going forward, that it would have to be in conformity?
Good question.
That's a good question. I think we could address that through any decision that's issued, where we could either look at it again. If you're inclined to approve the waiver, you could do that, and that way that would allow them to use the existing slab. But I think we could also condition it so that if for some reason the slab needed to be torn out, that then they would have to site the building, the new slab, with, outside of the setbacks, and be in conformance with the existing regulations. So I think we could do it so that they wouldn't have to come back before you all to say, hey, the slab was no good, we have to move the building 2 feet in further onto the property, and thereby get it out of the setbacks altogether.
Well, I think Elsie's concern is if the slab needs to be torn out and re-poured anyway, then if we didn't say something like this, then our permit might suggest they should do it on the existing footprint.
Correct.
So just throw it out to the applicants. If you're halfway through the process, you know you're going to have to tear out the foundation anyway because there are problems with it. And the condition were, well, if you already have to do that and you're going to re-pour it, now you got to be within the 5-foot setback. That doesn't, you already spent that money then, right? So that's a reasonable condition we could impose, right?
I'd probably defer to Andrew to.
I think that's fine. Yeah, the only thing that we would request is that the condition be something that the zoning administrator can enforce, right? So that it can be a quick turnaround in terms of the alternate site plan, or potentially, maybe we just submit an alternate site plan that has the structure in conformance and get it approved with the permit. But there should be, as long as there's a way to sort of get to what Plan B is quickly, I think it's fine, so I think either having an alternate site plan that we approve now that is in compliance, if the slab has to be removed, or just having the zoning administrator be able to, make that determination in the field or, via submission.
That would be consistent with what things we've asked you to do in the past in terms of enforcing conditions.
Yes,
right?
that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Last question, I think, for me. What's the building on the property behind your property that's also very close to your new building? Is that another garage?
I believe so, yes.
It's actually, David, the owner of that property is also here, so he can speak to that when we open it up to public comment.
There we go.
Yeah, and we're definitely further from that building than the one to the west.
So that, at the risk of saying that's a great transition to hearing from our next person in the room here, anybody else got any questions for the applicant? Great. Why don't you all switch seats and we'll hear from what I understand is an adjoining property owner. If you could let us know who you are and where your property is in relation to this proposed structure and what you'd like us to know.
Great. Well, my name is Herb Sinkinson. I've lived at 69 Maple Street in Winooski. The property that shares the property line with this particular property on Union Street. I've owned it since, I can't remember when, it was 1986 or 1987. I'm recently retired 2 years ago from the state of Vermont, where I worked for 43 years as probation and parole officer, supervisor, worked at the correctional center. Originally, I went to St. Michael's College, graduated 74, was hired by the Department of Corrections in 1975. I wanted to really rehabilitate people, people that were offenders. I was not the lock them up, the longer the better kind of mentality. I actually graduated with a psychology degree, and people used to kid me like, you can't rehabilitate everybody, but I always tried. And that followed through till I went to probation and parole. I spearheaded a program called reparative probation, which morphed into community justice centers, and you have one of the good community justice centers in Chittenden County here. But I started the first reparative probation board in Chittenden County before there were ever community justice centers in 1995, and I was responsible for educating judges, stakeholders, and the public about what restorative justice and reparative probation was all about. It's a nationally award-winning program that I submitted an application, I'm getting a little off the subject of this, but I just want to tell you who I am and what I do a little bit, so you get to know that, I am a human being with needs, and, I had goals, certain goals, and I still do, and I had certain dreams, and I still do. Some of them have not quite come to fruition or yet, but I'm working on it. So I put in an application after I wrote an article with a professor from a college in Massachusetts that came up to see the reparative board, and he suggested, why don't you put in an application to the Innovations in American Government Award in 1998. I did so, and we ended up, I got a call a couple weeks later from a judge. He wanted to come up to see the board in progress, and he said it blew him away. It was way beyond what he thought it would be. We won $100,000 to expand the program, and that in turn helped us get community justice centers and going in the rest of the state. Just a couple of other quick things about me. So I am currently I haven't stopped working. So I bought 57 Maple Street, right next to 69 Maple Street, a year and a half ago approximately, because I was troubled by what was going on there for the past 10 years. The initial 20 years that I lived there, I knew the people that lived there. They were working people. They were, some of them were friends of mine. Had a great relationship with them, and that went downhill. So I said, instead of just allowing somebody else to take it over and maybe neglect the property further, which is going to hurt my property value at 69 Maple Street, I share the same driveway with them as does the house in front of me, which is 71, I think. I decided, hey, if I can buy it, if I can swing it, I'm going to buy it and gradually improve it. So I'm in the process of doing that. It's been a long slog. It's only just beginning because of COVID and a whole bunch of other factors. But anyway, that's beyond the scope of this. But I do believe in revamping older buildings. As a matter of fact, mine is about a 100-year-old house, 69 Maple Street, and so is this property, 57, as well. They both have fieldstone foundations. The one at 69 Maple Street is in very good shape. The one at the other needs a little bit of work, as does just about everything at 57. So, but I'm working on it. Okay, and I also am still part of, I'm part of the system, so I'm part of American Probation and Parole Association. I am the Region 1 representative. There's 5 of us across the country, and I represent, my region is all of Canada, Maine, and down through South Carolina. And I have an area representative for each one of those states and one for Canada. And what we do at American Probation and Parole Association is ensure that whatever we're doing at probation and parole and community corrections is meaningful and is evidence-based. So it's got to be pretty much researched, because a lot of the programs we used to do, we found out, guess what, they don't really work. Reparative probation, by the way, when it was studied, reduces recidivism by 24%. So I feel that what I've done in my career has been meaningful, not just for me personally, but for my clients, for their families. And when I say clients, I mean people that are offended against the state, et cetera, or community, and victims, and the community at large. So that's a lot about what I'm about. So when I bought my house, I really loved it because it's a post and beam house. It's got tin ceilings in 2 rooms, which I love. They're wonderful. Mr. and Mrs. Yando, Ron and Cecile Yando, were an elderly couple. They owned the place in front of me, which is 71, I believe, Maple Street. I had worked at Ireland Construction first and then Ireland Concrete, so I had to separate the water lines, and I operated heavy equipment amongst a whole bunch of other things I did for them. And I dug a trench from the road out to 69 Maple Street because I had to separate the water system from 71, because at that time, the Endos owned both properties, and the water line went right through 71 to my place, and I had to agree to separate it out. So I can get things like that done, and I know a little bit about construction as a result to this day. I love the house because it had nice views of the mountains this way, even though they were partially blocked by trees, but especially upstairs, looking west is nice. I used to look out my kitchen window, bathroom, and rear window in my living room, and there was grass, and there was a couple of small buildings. There was one garage and a small garage or shed on 62 Union Street. I came home from work one day, and there was construction going on, and this great big building was going up, and I kind of shook my head and said, "What is going on?" And it is, and I saw the footprint was 10 feet from my property. My building was already just a few feet from the property line. And so what was just a small building became this long building along my borderline. And I was immediately concerned about the water runoff, as well as the noise, as well as the possibility of fire, as well as no more view. And but I didn't really have a lot of time. As I told you some of what I did. I also ran nonprofits, so I helped get Mothers Against Drunk Driving Vermont chapter going during that period in time. I was attending University of Vermont to get my master's in public administration. I was also on the New England Council on Crime and Delinquency board of directors at that time, and several other things. So I didn't have a lot of time to, and I didn't know that much about real estate law, zoning, and all the rest of it. I kick myself now because I should have made an issue of it. And I had a great lawyer, Doug Winooski, who unfortunately passed last year. But I just, I was too busy. I didn't have the money to hire, I thought, Doug or any other lawyer. So I just said, okay, and I'll deal with it as best I can. But it's created a lot of problems for me, a lot of problems. And let me just say that this is 6 feet from tip to tip here, from fingertip to fingertip. Another 4 feet is where their garage and other building, apartment, or office is. So you put another 2 feet here and another 2 feet here, and that's 10 feet. And that is not a lot of space. Does anybody have a bedroom that is 10 feet long here? I don't think so, probably not. I mean, maybe, but 10 feet's awfully tight, to use the term that this gentleman used a few minutes ago. So this is 10 feet right here. This is 10 feet, right smack dab there. Yep, right there. So from here, you guys, 10 feet. And the pitch of the building, most of it is towards the back, some of it's off to the side, but it doesn't matter because the water has nowhere to go but a 10-foot area of lawn, dirt, trees, etc. It has nowhere to go, and and I've had moisture problems in my basement ever since, and dampness. I don't have water running into it because it is tight, but it wasn't like that when I first moved in. Once this thing was there, it was a problem. Things that are metal in my basement rot. Something, if this ever was to happen and this building continues to be there, or, an expanded building gets put on this spot, at the very least, I would want a major engineering survey done and something done about my moisture, because the moisture is largely due to this building being there. It's a slab, so all of the rain that comes down, if this is the footprint of it, it's got to go somewhere. It can't go through the ground like it used to before that huge building was put in there. Winooski, I'm so glad that Winooski told me about this, sent me a letter. Unfortunately, when they sent the letter originally, I don't know when it was, you know, probably early 90s, I would think, or maybe late 80s or something. It wasn't too long after I bought the property. A letter was sent about this proposed property going in. The trouble was it went to Ron and his wife Cecile Yendo, who still lived in the area. And when I called about it, they said, well, yeah, we sent that to the owner of your property. I said, no, I'm the owner of that property now. It's not the Yendos. And the Yendos just figured, hey, I must have been copied, but I wasn't copied. So I never had a chance to actually fight it. I mean, I could have after I saw them beginning the work, but it was already kind of late in the game, I figured too. So it was I felt it was a raw deal because guess what? I come from New York City, well, just outside New York City, and I used to visit my brother when he was living in New York City in a tenement high-rise apartment, 5th floor, and you know, he had about 30 feet between his apartment and the apartment next door. But I thought that was really tight, to use that term again. And it was kind of depressing, you know, because all he could look at is another building. But he didn't live there for long, and he moved out to Long Island to a house. So instead of my view out my back windows, now I see vinyl siding. And if this is approved, then it'll continue to be that way. And that's just the beginning of it. Oh, by the way, it's 10 feet between the two buildings. It's about 7.5 feet between their building and my chimney on the back of my house. So it's even tighter. Plus, there's even less if you take into account their soffit and fascia sticking out, you know, so the 10 feet was just from siding to siding. Additionally, it's so close to my garage too. So I have a garage, detached garage, and that's infringed on too, even more so. So that's 92 inches. I just measured it today, 92 inches. From the back of my garage to the back of that building. Now I'm going to redo my garage. Well, if I get a permit, and I plan to eventually. But so I took down the front part of the garage. The back part is still there, but the back, that whole slab that I have is 92 inches from their slab. In other words, do you see that at all? Are you able to see that on your? By the way, I have some photos, so I don't know if you need to see those now, but I can certainly send those to you. And I've taken photos of how close it is, how close I am, their property is to mine. Oh yeah, so you can probably. Pardon me?
So is that existing building, that's your house?
So, so this is, so this is my garage. So you see how close that is to there.
Got it.
This is my house, and that's how close it is.
Got it.
So that's about 120 inches. The garage is 92 inches. So, you know, one of my dreams was really have a nice view, and I did in the beginning. And I still do, you know, I can still look out west and see the mountains, but that's about nothing out the back door that interests me, or back windows. Not only that, but there was noise. There was so much noise from that building when East Coast Printers was doing a screen printing business there, printing T-shirts for several years. and East Coast limo service was operating out of there. So the 3 bays had limousines in it. And so I thought it was a residential area, so I never really expected that. But again, I didn't know the law, and I didn't really, I guess I didn't object when I should have. I really should have. So again, I kicked myself. But the worst part is that they exhausted the air from inside directly out the back towards my house. So I used to smell dyes and paint sometimes. Very unfortunate, but anyway. So, so the visual was not so good. Plus, then I was worried about fire. And I used to be a chimney sweep. I had my own chimney sweeping business with a guy by the name of Reg Bushy. We were partners, and we did that while we were working for the Department of Corrections, and we did that for 2 or 3 years. And so I know a little bit about fire codes and about fire, and it scares the heck out of me. So I figured, boy, if that building goes up, guess what? I'm going to be awfully lucky if they can save mine, because it'll go up real fast, being 10 feet from it. And at least, and my garage too, for that matter. So, you know, the things that I had in my garage, my car, my boat, this, that, and the other. So it could be a total loss. So, and the noise, I could hear voices in the building. I could hear music in the building. I could definitely hear pounding in the building. I could hear people walking up and down the stairs in the building. So again, it was like living in an apartment all of a sudden rather than having a house. And that's, even if there's a lot of insulation, my fear and my belief is that I will still hear way too much. So, and you know, with the air traffic going right smack dab over the property, we're all in Winooski to a degree, but we're right smack dab on the flight path. So it's noisy to begin with, and I don't need extra noise to deal with, and I hope I don't have to. I heard some, no reasonable alternative. I think I'm the one with no reasonable alternative. I don't think the owners, one of the owners who said they had no reasonable alternative, or were talking about no reasonable alternative, or perhaps this gentleman was. I'm really the one with no reasonable alternative. They have an alternative. I called a construction company. I called Ireland Construction today, or yesterday, and I gave them the dimensions of the pad approximately. They said it would cost about $7,000 with frost walls built first, and then the slab. And I said, what about just the slab? Well, it's going to cost about the same thing either way, and he told me why, and so it made sense. That's not a heck of a lot of money when you're buying a property like 62 Union Street and you're putting in all these renovations into it like they did, because I watched it. They changed it, and they're talking about this project on top of it. So I think $7,000 is like a drop in the bucket. As a matter of fact, I would be willing to share the cost of the new slab with them if they want to do that, and put the building off to their side where they have plenty of room. They have plenty of room because there was the other tenants in the building before the current ones, before they transferred, before it was sold, for years had a great big garden over there, and that was only part of that yard off to the side and the back. So if you look at their property from the street, the whole left side is just a straight shot back to 57 Maple Street, and the border that they share with that, which is just a parking lot. That would bother no one if they put that building up there, and they could be close to that border. I wouldn't care, because I own that property.
Eric, can you put the map back up? I just want to make sure I understand what
Yep.
you're...
What I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So we got the footprint of the existing garage in the lower left. You'd like that, I'm hearing very clearly that
Okay, so there, let's see.
You wanna move it over here?
So,
you're looking at the lower right is where you
Yeah.
say a better site would be.
all right, yeah, so, so there, yeah, is this their property boundary
Yep.
right here?
Yep.
Yeah, so they have, they're gonna tear this down, I heard, so, anyway, that's just a little shed. But they could put that building right there.
Yep.
And, you know, in a way, I mean, that's not gonna be the best, but it's so much better than what it is. Why won't it be the best? Because I know this will be a parking lot, and I'll be dealing with, you know,
Yeah.
people's headlights when they park or come in, but that's way better for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think what I'm hearing you say is you'd love for that garage to not exist at all. And
Right.
if it weren't for that
yeah, and
foundation,
they could take, that's
Yeah.
about that size, right, the width?
well, let me
Yeah, go ahead.
let me just finish.
Yeah,
If it weren't for that foundation, I think you're suggesting that a more natural place to put this accessory structure is in that lower right corner,
yes,
kind of rotated 90 degrees.
right, and this is a parking lot on 57, and I own that property, so
Yeah.
I guarantee the owner will get that.
There you go.
No problem with, you know, I won't object, let's put it that way.
Got it.
Um,
Can I ask real quick, had you proposed this alternative prior to tonight's?
Yeah, have you talked with them about like, hey,
Talk to who?
the owners? So
Oh, I did talk to one of the owners, I don't know which one, but I met one of the owners. He was over there with his wife and child, and I told him why I would, you know, I said, hey, it's nice to meet you, but, you know, I don't want to start off on the wrong foot, but this is really a big deal for me if you're going to do this. You know, I told him that I would not agree and I would adamantly fight it. But, you know, can we work something out? But he wasn't, you know, my impression was he wasn't interested and he was going to forge ahead, so.
But you haven't talked in any detail about this idea that you floated to share the cost of reporting?
Oh, no, not yet. That just occurred to me today, but, you know.
Yeah, and this, I'm not suggesting that you work it out here in this meeting, but it's
Yeah.
always helpful to know if there's
Yeah.
any history of discussions there.
So, you know, the problem is that that original building was not in compliance, and I didn't know about it in a timely fashion, and by the time I knew about it, it was already in the process of being built. And it's huge compared to what was there, you know, and
Matt,
Sorry to interrupt.
shocking to me. Huh? So,
Sorry to interrupt real quick. I know you said you've owned that other property for quite some time. Can you give a timeline as to when this existing garage was built? Do you remember
well,
approximately?
as I said, you know, it's difficult to remember, but it was within just a few years of after I bought my property, I think. And
Late
And that was
80s,
worth-
early 90s.
I don't remember exactly. I would say, do you know? I think it was early 90s. Yeah, early 90s is about right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But I had, you know, I really used to, I loved it because it was just, you know, I had sunlight coming in through my windows from the back, even though it was north facing, but it was just nice, you know, and I never would have bought the house, even though I love the house. If that building had been there, I never would have bought the house, which tells me that my property value has dropped considerably because other people that would be a deal breaker for some people, I'm sure. And it would have been a deal breaker for me, so I wouldn't have bought it. I just, you know, especially knowing that the water situation and all, so, anyway. And I do tend to get kind of mildew and that sort of thing, and I have chronic conditions. I'm on, you know, I'm on more medications than you can believe, but anyway, one of my things is sleep is essential, and you know, with noise next door, which I used to get, sometimes it was stuff that would wake me up, especially if I had my windows open. And I tend not to use air conditioners. I like to have, you know, a more natural kind of flow of air. So that's a problem. You know, with having any mildew or fungus in the house, in the basement at all, something I need to keep on top of, it doesn't just stay in the basement. It tends to, you know, flow through the house, I would assume. So I have to be careful about all that stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then, you know, hammering, voices, music, people walking up and down the stairs. Just a second, excuse me. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to emphasize that I hope, you know, that my rights and my interests are taken into account here. And I'm glad to be able to share, you know, what my concerns, rights, and as I see them. I'm not in a position, but I have I have some interests that I've tried to outline to you folks. And let's see. Let's see. I have the photos. I think I made all these notes, but I kind of had it all in my head anyway and already said most of it. So let's see. Yeah, I just think, you know, if there was a you know, an engineering, I mean, this is, if worst comes to worst, I really pray and hope it doesn't come to it, but if it is allowed, then at the very least, I would want to insist on a in-depth engineering survey be done, and with, you know, people that know about water and water abatement and all that kind of thing. And I would think that they would have to, I wouldn't be sharing, I wouldn't think it would be fair for me to have to share in any of that, but I would want to know from, you know, the engineering firm that, and they would have to be a neutral party, not somebody that got hired by the other party, I would think, you know, or I would have to hire my own engineering firm to kind of look at the plan and see if, you know, putting in the drains and all the rest of it and whatnot, you know, maybe pumps and all that sort of thing was going to really make the difference or not. Let's see. Yeah, so I think that's about mainly what I wanted to present, but again, I do have the photos that will show you just what I'm talking about and really how close it is. You know, think about your car. How many feet is your car? It's probably, unless you have a real super duper compact, it's way more than 10 feet long.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear, at least to me, from the aerial photos. They kind of show it from above.
Yep.
If you'd like to get those into our record, you would want to submit them to Eric, because we can't pass around your phone and have it.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if there was a way that I could send it to you and you could put them up.
Yeah, not really.
No,
but you can
okay.
send them to Eric so they're part of the record. We kind of do that after the fact. Like folks
Right.
that can't come sometimes send letters. But at least for my purposes, I think it's pretty clear the distances just from the aerial photo.
Yeah.
So folks on the DRB have additional questions. Let's start with the people online. Matt, Caitlin.
Caitlin is, she popped off already,
Caitlin
so she
popped
had to
off,
leave
great.
early, so.
Matt, you good? Good. Anybody here? More questions?
Eric, when did the regulations?
Could I say a couple words just to Herb, just because I haven't talked to him for 6 months
Sure.
And-
Why don't we,
about
Andrew?
what was brought up?
Oh, go ahead.
I just, so I think I just like to say, I appreciate where Herb is coming from. It was me who he talked to a few weeks back when I was up there with my wife and daughter, checking in on the property. I heard what Herb said at that point were his primary concerns. And although we haven't, had a chance to catch up about it, we did put a significant amount of effort into this project to alleviate those concerns. So you'll notice that the roof of the building sheds left and right. It doesn't shed back towards Herb's property. So the existing roof dumps water on Herb's property and our roof won't. It will dump it to the right and the left. It'll be guttered down onto the pavement and it'll exit the front of the property into the stormwater system for the city. Drying that out, solving that problem for him. We didn't put a single window in the back of the structure. We've tried to insulate the walls and add, and keep things quiet for him. To the concern with fire, I mean, certainly the existing dilapidated building with antiquated electrical systems is a much higher risk than the new apartment building would be, certainly with somebody living in it and new, fire rated walls that would abut those areas that are in close proximity. We've offered to put in a fence along the property line. We've offered to add landscaping, certainly amenable to all of that. I think, our goal here is to improve the property and improve the situation. And, I certainly recognize
Your property, not mine.
Well, I certainly,
Let's just be clear about it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're looking to improve your own property. You're at the distinct cost to my property and my property value and what my property is worth. So let's be honest about
So
it, please.
I didn't interrupt Herb when you were talking, and I just like to finish what I was saying, if that's okay, just to the board. We bought this property with the idea of trying to improve it, of trying to make use of what's there. I think that there's a perfectly good structure in place that we're looking to improve upon, and it is an improvement for everybody because the current structure is a dilapidated, water leaking fire hazard, and the new structure will be a high efficiency building with good people, good families who need housing living in it, and achieving a goal of the city of Winooski of increasing the housing base. And it's not going to be a t-shirt factory or a limousine service, which it was in the past. It would be a residential compliant use. So, the project really is tough to pencil out right now. We're really counting on being able to reuse this foundation. The estimate of $7,000 is just, it's not accurate. My estimate is
Sorry, go ahead.
and I think, to ask somebody over the phone for the cost of some square footage of concrete, it ignores the cost of the demolition of the existing foundation, the excavation, the stone compaction, the footing drain daylights, what other components, the structural engineering and architecture involved in redesigning an entire new slab. I mean, this isn't just SD Ireland showing up with a truck full of concrete. And I don't think that they could pour an 800 square foot foundation for $7,000, even if that was all they were doing. So I would say to the board that the cost is meaningful, and we've tried to be as thoughtful as possible. We are certainly willing to, have the engineer document the stormwater systems and any ways that we can drain that out. We're willing to put up a fence. We're willing to add trees. We can decorate the back wall or add windows if it would make it more attractive. But we are, doing our best to sort of improve upon a situation we didn't create. I think we can all acknowledge what happened in the 90s or in the past. Maybe it wasn't ideal, but the situation exists currently, and to the conversation earlier, we're doing our best not to make it worse. So
Herb, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I want you to imagine that the board is inclined to grant the applicant's request. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes.
But one thing that's helpful for us to know is if we were gonna say, yes, you meet the criteria laid out in our standards, but we have the opportunity to attach conditions. You've talked about doing some engineering specifically on the runoff, but I just heard Andrew offer some additional things that help with, privacy concerns, view concerns, specifically a fence, landscaping, maybe changing the look of that back wall. Is any of that something you'd like us to consider if we are already inclined to grant the application? I'm not saying we are.
Yeah. Fence? Fence isn't gonna do anything about the water runoff. By the way, in looking at the runoff off the roof, the side going west is part of the concern too, because there's another building about 6 feet from that building. That's an old dilapidated garage next door to 62 Union. I don't know if you folks are aware of that, but so the water that goes in between there, it's only gonna go down for the most part, because it's not gonna go, it would have to go uphill a little bit, I think, to go up their driveway and then down to Union Street.
I think I heard it's gonna go east and west, but
No,
then the gutters are gonna take it north with the goal that it goes basically down the driveway
Yeah.
onto Union Street.
Well, that's assuming that gutters catch all the rainwater in a heavy rain. My experience is that gutters don't catch all of the runoff by any stretch, so.
If our standard was a heavy rain, we probably wouldn't ever approve anything.
Right,
So we
right.
gotta work within reality a little bit.
Yeah, but can I ask, I forgot your name.
So, Andrew?
Andrew? Yeah. Are you a civil engineer?
No, but Greg is.
Fine,
And
okay.
engaged.
I don't know if you were, yeah. Okay,
So Greg, is that correct? I don't know if I can do that. Is that correct understanding about what would happen to the
Yes,
stormwater?
The existing building sits at a high point in that backyard. About, I think it's 230. It does, the building right now does shed back, does drain into his yard, 100%. I'm full agreement with that. Our plan is to shed it to both the east and the west, gutter it, and push it north, where the grade transitions and all that water will go out.
So could you, you've reduced the impermeable percentage of the property,
Yes.
the lot coverage, but might we end up seeing actually more stormwater running into the street because of this change?
There's a chance, yes, but it's going to city infrastructure that
That's where it's supposed to
able
go.
to handle that.
It's supposed to go into the city stormwater drains, not into an adjoining property owner's backyard, right?
but I didn't think, I was told I wasn't supposed to drain into the sewer line because it would overload it from my property, so I,
So we can't drain into the municipal sewer,
right.
so we're draining into the municipal stormwater.
Okay,
There's two separate.
there is. Okay, I thought it was all one. Maybe
I
they
think
separated it?
I think
Okay,
it combines.
okay. But anyway,
Well, let me ask you, talked about a fence, and it doesn't sound like that's something that's interesting to you. What about landscaping along the boundary? Put up some good-looking plants, trees, something like that? No.
no, because the water issue is still the water has nowhere to go except for down, and then it puts pressure on my foundation. And that's the issue. So basically, if pavers were installed all along that, and they were to be slanted towards his building, something along those lines might work. But
Yeah, I mean,
trees and bushes and shrubs, I mean, give me a break.
vegetation
That's-
does have a tendency to mitigate. Am I wrong about this? I don't know a lot about this, but I feel
Right.
like people plant trees to mitigate
No, understood,
stormwater.
but, yeah, but, it's difficult. I mean, I can't really be growing flowers and stuff like that that need a lot of sunlight because, first of all, it's on the north side. Secondly, the building blocks, substantially what sunlight gets in there too. So, so there's no point in trying to grow things there. And, a fence is small potatoes really compared to what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the viability of my foundation and, the moisture in my house and fighting, fungus, mildew, and all that kind of stuff. And the fact is that I can't keep anything in my basement with even running the dehumidifier, which is very costly. And all of this happened after this building was built. So there was not a problem before that. So that's what I'm really concerned about, and that's what, so all this other stuff is just, it's just frosting on the cake. It's not really.
So just to that point, I want to reiterate that the existing building roof dumps water on the property line, and the proposed structure, the proposed improvements will not. It will solve an existing problem, which is creating this issue. So, we have a civil engineer on site who's designed the project to mitigate that issue. And that was part of the design of the building with the sort of roof that was draining in an opposite direction to what sort of makes the most sense. From a constructability perspective, it would be easier to drop trusses the same way on the roof that they're going. But we have a sort of complicated roof system at a low pitch running in opposite directions in order to mitigate this. And so, if the project does not proceed, the water and intrusion issues will continue. And if it does, I'm confident that the situation will be greatly improved. We'd also most likely be installing a French drain around the base of the foundation, the existing foundation, to ensure that any water in the ground in the back of the house was brought around to the front to sort of avoid water intrusion in the new structure as well, which would also aid in drying out that backyard. So I'm very certain and to represent to the board, and we would certainly accept any conditions related to installing that stormwater mitigation on the project.
So part of the challenge we have is our only options are yes or no. And if we say no, the applicants are well within their rights and probably will just go back to the drawing board for a while, and that garage stays. And the south-facing roof stays, and you don't get any relief for your runoff issues. And that could stay that way forever. So we don't really have the power to say no, and by the way, take down that garage and recite the foundation to the other side and build whatever you want to build there.
Right.
So
But
that's part of.
I understand.
Yeah.
But there are cracks, I believe, in the. It's got cinder blocks on top of the slab, and there are some definite, at least one very pronounced crack about this wide going down the cinder block wall on the corner of the building towards 57 Maple Street. And, it's not a poured foundation wall, that little short wall that sits on top of the slab. But anyway, my thinking is that, well, within a few years, I would, unless some money is put into the roof and, some renovations done, that I would think that at a certain point, it's going to be, come to the attention that this is not a safe building to the authorities. So
Unless it's occupied, the authorities tend not to care about unoccupied structures that are falling down.
Right.
I have many clients who own those.
Except that this one happens to be, 7.5 feet from my chimney, 10 feet from my actual building. So they should be.
Let me ask a remix of Elsie's question from before. So let's imagine you're approved as proposed with some conditions, but you go forward and you figure out this existing foundation is cracked. It's not going to work. You got to tear it out anyway, and pour a new one. So in that circumstance, we originally said, well, we might condition it on staying within the setback. Why not condition it on staying within the setback? Oh, and by the way, go to the other side where you're not, pretty close to all these other structures. Question for the applicants, similar to what I asked earlier. If you have to redo it all anyway, are you okay going over to the other side where that existing shed is?
I think we'd have to sort of look at that a little bit more carefully because of the way the building's configured, and would the garage still function? Would you be able to pull in? You know what I mean? That the architecture of the building might need to change in order to be on a different part of the site. Certainly we can take a look at that. I'd hate to need to sort of continue the hearing, but potentially that's an option if the board thinks that we should have a firm answer to that. I think in answering the question earlier, my sort of working theory was we would just move it forward 2.5 feet and to be in compliance.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. But
which would sort of function, and then the form of the building would function similarly versus shifting it to the left. The other problem there is that, I think that the owner, Herb, is the owner of one of the adjacent properties, but not all of them. And certainly those folks might not appreciate a new structure that doesn't currently exist, in their side yard. And so they weren't.
If you're within the setback, those adjoiners have less standards that can entangle.
Certainly, and I think we could certainly look at whether Greg could make a parking configuration work in an alternate scenario where the building shifted to the left. If that's the direction you guys want to go, we can take a look at it and come back. I don't know how often you meet, but we could come back and with that plan and make sure that it all works.
Yeah, well, in this scenario, so the configuration of the building itself, the standards don't really care how the building is configured. That's a different part of code. So it could work without coming back here with the review authority vested in Eric that it is indeed within the setback, generally where we said it should be, and how you configure it is not something we actually consider as part of these regs. But I'm as you can tell, I'm talking in a lot of hypotheticals. So let me stop talking.
That's understandable. I appreciate that, and that would certainly be our preference if that's possible.
Can I just make a couple other comments?
Sure.
So Andrew, the offer that I was talking about earlier, if you are willing to take a look at that, if you are open to that, I will contribute. Maybe I don't know what percentage, but I would contribute to the new slab and excavation work. And I actually did get that exact footprint. It was what I thought it was, and I called JB, who does the cost estimations at Ireland Concrete. So that's who told me. He knows his business. He's the guy that does all that kind of figuring. It was $7,000 for the slab and the insulated walls. So it's a footings. It's not just a floating slab as they call it. It's footings, insulated footings with the slab. And I said, well, wouldn't the slab be cheaper? And he said, nah, well, maybe $1,000. But he said, you're much better off with the former, with the footings. And that's been my experience too. But that's not for the excavation and taking the slab that's there out. But maybe you don't need to take the slab out because that could be part of the parking area. So if that garage and other building was taken down, and you know, I could even help you do the excavation because I've done that kind of work with backhoes for years. So, I don't know, you know, maybe we do a neighborly kind of a, you know, project a little bit, part of it. But anyway, it doesn't account for the excavation work to prepare the spot for the pad, and it doesn't account for the 3/4 inch crushed stone to go in either. But he said that would be probably less than 7,000 above that. So in other words, he said it would be you know, that's most of the cost is the 7,000.
Yeah. So I'd like to move forward in this hearing because we're already a little past 8
Sure.
o'clock. So I think what happens from here, I'll open it up to final questions in a moment, but what happens from here, we have a couple more items on our agenda, then we go into deliberative session, which is non-public. I have heard some conversations between the applicant and an adjoiner starting. It's possible we will decide not to even deliberate this evening and do it via Zoom some other day. I'm going to pose the question to the applicant. Totally your call. Have you heard something you'd like to explore before we deliberate? Say, for example, tell us, hey, why don't you not deliberate tonight? You know, figure out some day via Zoom next week, whatever. Give us a couple days. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can come here arm in arm with a new proposal that nobody opposes. Do you want to take that time, or do you feel like that's just not, it's not going to work out, and you'd like us to decide it one way or another tonight, or whenever we decide to decide it? No pressure. And I know there's two of you, so.
Yeah, you guys are making me think. So I would say that there's no harm in having a conversation, and that, you know, I'm not opposed to having a conversation. And I think, you know, if there was a way to make this work that enabled the project to proceed in a way that, you know, works for us and works for our neighbor, that's obviously the best outcome. I haven't had the chance to talk with the neighbor, and so, you know, maybe there's something there that we could figure out. I'm happy to do that, and then, you know, circle back with you guys and let you know the outcome of that conversation, if there's a change that we can agree to, or if it's sort of just we're still where we started at the hearing and, you know, we weren't able to come to an agreement. But I don't see why we shouldn't have a conversation. You know, we're not in that big of a time crunch.
Your engineer wants to say something.
I just have a quick question. Could you vote on the overarching conditional use, like the fact that we could move forward with actually having a detached building in this backyard? Where it is situated could be on Eric and I to decide with the neighbor, with her, with having all those conversations. But after the actual conditional use, which has to come before you guys, you could vote on saying, yes, you can have a detached house in the backyard, dependent on it falling within all the necessary dimensions and conditions that Eric could do. Is that something you could vote on? And then, so just so we wouldn't have to fully come back to the DRB and come back and I think it would be like May.
Yeah, it's hard to approve. I'm just speaking off the top of my head here. I totally get where you're coming from. The conditional use doesn't help you at all unless you have the waiver with your current proposal. But I think what I'm hearing you say is if the waiver's off the table, you'd rather not have to come back just for the conditional use if you agree on the siting, your adjoiner's on board. I don't know that we're allowed to do that. We kind of have to approve the conditional use based on a plan submitted to us. And I think the owners of the adjoiners to where you might want to move it to might have something to say about that suggestion. So I think you do have to come back. Eric, am I in the ballpark?
I would think probably what we would look at is continuing the hearing to a time certain, which would be our next meeting, which would allow the applicant and the adjacent property owners time to meet and discuss and try to come to a resolution on a new location, which would then result in a new site plan that we could look at and review and consider at that time, if that's something that they're amenable to. The other option is we close the hearing and make a decision based on what's in front of us tonight.
And if you continue the hearing, you don't need to notice it again, right?
I believe that's correct. I think we can make the decision tonight to continue the hearing to a time certain, identifying our next meeting, which would be May 19th. And then I don't believe we need to notify adjacent property owners or re-warn a hearing because we haven't closed this hearing.
But could you accept a revised plan at that hearing?
I think we can, because generally, as I understand it, one of the reasons for continuing a hearing is to get new evidence. So an updated site plan could be that new evidence that you want to see before you make a decision.
Yeah,
If that is something that they can agree to.
So this
Because I know,
sorry,
That was Matt.
oh, no, I was gonna say, I know that there's a burden on the applicants every time that they have to appear before us. Would that continue as well, or would they need to reapply or repay anything?
No, we would yes, this would all continue as is. There would be no need for the applicant to do anything else other than attend another meeting.
Okay.
And I mean, maybe there would be some cost potentially in developing the additional site plans, but there wouldn't be any need for them to reapply or provide the fees for noticing adjacent property owners and noticing the public meeting. We would basically just continue it as is.
Okay, thanks.
So this suggestion to continue this hearing doesn't allow for the possibility that we could make a decision on the application as presented. So it's a little bit of a morph from my suggestion to delay deliberative session. We would be holding the whole thing open. You can't get a decision from us either way until next month. But I'm sensing enough vibes from my fellow DRB members that we're a little sketchy about how it's currently presented, and there are enough open questions that you might not want us to deliberate on it as it's proposed. I'm just guessing. So I think you could benefit from the continuance. I think you could also benefit from an estimate from somebody who can tell you the exact cost of redoing that foundation, either like 2.5 feet away or elsewhere, because it is hard, at least for me, to evaluate the reasonableness of that without a number that I can say, well, of course I'm not going to make you spend $30,000, but I might make you spend $7.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and we will get, we'll get the foundation estimated, and we'll get an alternative, plan ready, and we'll bring it to you guys in, 2 weeks, and we'll, in the interim, if Greg get Herb's contact information, because I'm not
I already gave it to him.
already done.
we can connect with him as well on his cost sharing proposal and see if there's something where we can, make it easier for you guys at the next hearing or not.
Well, I've been running ahead of my fellow DRB members with all this speculating. Is everybody cool with this plan? Anybody think I'm crazy? Yes.
I just had one other question. Is there
Sure.
anything else while we're doing this that the board wanted us to reconsider? Any other aspect of the submission?
Great question.
I have serious concerns about the tree that I brought up earlier. If it's still there in between the shed at 70 and your current garage, I am almost positive that if you look at Google Street View and get down and actually look at the photo that was taken, I think it was October of 2021, it's a sizable tree that is in between two buildings that are 3 feet apart. And that is going to have a direct impact on 70, which is why I think that there needs to be a conversation with the owner of 70 to find out how you want to share that burden as well. Unless it's already gone.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it, Kevin?
It's there. I saw it when I drove by. It's a large tree,
Yeah.
very close to
This
both
is the
buildings.
20-foot box elder right here.
Yeah, it's located on the plan.
If that garage goes to another part of the property, does your concern go away? Because now it's not.
It does go away, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe problem solved.
I think that tree, as the buildings currently stand, I think that tree needs to come down anyway. Not that, yeah, not, if you go down, one more photo to the right,
Oh, right there.
look in between the two buildings.
Yeah, you can see it, you can just
Oh.
barely see it right here. There's
Look
a,
at that eagle eye.
there's a tree right in there.
Yeah.
And then when you zoom out and look at other pictures, it clearly sprawls
Yeah.
over the existing garage structure.
And that's the other run, you can see in that picture, if you go back to that just for a second, you can see the other old garage that's sitting there that's just 6 feet from this property and will be still there when this, if this new building is put in there, which if I were building that and I own 62 Union, I would be concerned about, because that is so close. Again, if that catches fire, they have a real problem. And I know they do store gasoline as well as mowers and things like that in there, in that other one. Now, the other thing I was gonna simply point out too, to kind of just get people aware of, is if you're moving into this proposed building there, I mean, people have no windows on the south side, which is desirable. You really want to have windows on the south side if you have plants and all that sort of thing. They won't have any windows, or maybe a couple of small ones, but it sounded like they didn't want to put the windows in deference to me and the noise and whatnot. But versus if that same unit was put over on the side, there's no issue. They'd have windows anywhere they want them, all around that building. And so much more desirable to their tenants.
I think the challenge the applicants are facing, to be fair to them, is if this existing garage and foundation wasn't there, it's not like that's a natural place to put an accessory structure on this lot. But they've got the existing footprint, and the path of least resistance is to build on that existing footprint.
I'm aware of that, right.
So I think if that garage were never there, if that foundation was
Right.
totally busted and couldn't use it, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
No, I'm aware of that, but I'm simply saying that put yourself in the shoes of tenants that are gonna be paying good money to live there. Would you rather have no windows at all on the south side, or would you rather have windows on the south side and have some space? Or would you rather be looking at my place and my garage, if you do have a window? I wouldn't want that, so I think they'd be better off and living next to an old rundown garage 6 feet away. I wouldn't want that either, so.
Sorry, let me get back to the question. Any other things for the group to think about in the next month or so as they reapproach this issue? That we would raise next month, and we should raise now, so it's not a surprise then.
I would think it would make sense to, if you can't come to some agreement and you want us to consider the current proposal and plan on going ahead with the existing foundation, you'd want to have somebody take a look at it and make sure it's actually got frost walls, it goes down a certain depth, that, it's adequate for the intended use. I don't think we've heard anything about that.
Mr. Chair, I identified 2 items that you may
Yes.
be interested in as well, but just based on the conversation, there
Only
was...
my dad calls me Mr. Chair.
There was the conversation about the widening of the driveway and getting some feedback from emergency services, if they're interested in that, or if they have any issues with the existing width of the driveway.
Sure, call them again.
To try to follow up with them.
Call them on the emergency line this time. They'll love that.
And then there was another item that I identified potentially with the existing location or a future location. If you all want to see any type of grading plan to show how that runoff may be addressed.
Yeah, we're looking at the grading, and it looks like super duper flat on this, unless there's grading that's not depicted, but the whole thing looks pretty flat. It's dead flat. Yeah.
Or I guess unless there's any proposed grading to address the runoff as was discussed.
This is also, if you look at this, it's 230.
Right now, the building sits
Yeah.
at a high point,
And this
so
is
we're just
Okay.
trying to get
225.
more water to
So
go.
it's like,
Lower
there's a
the
lot.
sediment to Kurt's backyard.
Got it.
That was the stormwater point.
So how does one continue a hearing? Do we vote to do that?
I think,
Do
yes, you'll need to make a motion to continue the hearing to a time certain, and the next, like I said, our next meeting is May 19th at 6:30, so if you want to make that as a motion, or if somebody wanted to make that as a motion, I believe that's all we would need to do to be able to keep the hearing open. With that in mind, you wouldn't be able to talk about it, any issues related to this matter, either tonight or in the future, until we have that hearing, because we are still basically in a hearing.
Got it.
No problem there.
Does anyone want to say the words "so moved"?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye. All right, this hearing has been continued to our next DRB hearing. I really appreciate the progress that the applicant and the adjoiner have made tonight. I think
Thanks,
it'll-
Andrew, by the way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great plan to meet up. I hope it works out. It's possible it doesn't. That's what we're here for. But I definitely encourage you to get together and really think about this. And I'll tell you the thing that judges always tell me when they're trying to get me to compromise. A great compromise, everybody's going to feel a little bit bad about it. But that's how you know it's a good compromise.
But a little bit good about it, too.
Yeah, you mostly feel the bad though, right after. You mostly feel bad. But that means you did well.
Okay.
So we do have other items on our agenda that are more organizational for the DRB. Feel free to stick
Thank you all.
and watch the sausage making of government, or go home. That's an option too. So our next item on our agenda is discussion of DRB organization and membership roles.
Yeah, so this was an item that Kevin and I had talked about having on the agenda. As Kevin has mentioned in the past, he's looking at potentially taking a less prominent role with the Development Review Board, potentially stepping back to an alternate position, which would allow one of the current alternates, either Elsie or Caitlin, to be elevated to I'll say a full member, for lack of a better term. That would also then mean that we would need to vote in a new chair. Generally speaking, this would, probably a logical time for this to happen would be in July, when we do our reorganization anyway, when council, mayor and council generally appoint any new commission members or reappoint existing commission members in June to coincide with the end of the fiscal year and the beginning of a new fiscal year. So we typically do a reorganization in July, at our July meeting, or the closest meeting to that anyway. So this is something that would happen. We could have this happen in basically with, have it take effect, make a recommendation to council for reorganization of the body at their June meeting when they make appointments, and then when we meet after that, we can reorganize for chair, vice chair, secretary, as we do anyway. So that's kind of the overview of everything. I don't know, Kevin, if there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, so I think the official action through council would just be to swap me with one of our two alternates.
Correct.
I've historically suggested Elsie because of seniority. You've been waiting longer. And then at our first meeting with the new composition, we would vote on chair, vice chair, secretary.
Right. And I guess I would need to look to see, I'm not sure when your terms are up, Elsie and Kevin, if you were interested in that. So it may just be a reappointment with your existing terms, and you would just swap positions. Or a full reappointment if you're interested in being reappointed. So I have not looked recently to see when people's appointments are expiring, but we do have a list of all that.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll figure that out. As you know, we are currently house shopping, and there are not very many houses in Winooski, even for sale, under any condition. So part of the reason is I may not live here for very much longer, but who knows? There could never be a house for sale that we are capable of buying in the current market. So we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. Everybody cool with that plan?
So I just want to verify that you're going to run out the term as president until June, July? Is that what I'm hearing?
Don't physically live here anymore, unless you're really looking to oust me, you could make a motion right now. I'm ready.
No, so there are certain aspects of my situation, which is why I've been unable to commit to what you proposed even back in, I think it was December when you first brought this up.
Yeah.
That I'm not comfortable talking about, knowing that this is being recorded and things. But there are certain aspects of my situation that are evolving and changing. But we can talk about those at some point when we are in a closed deliberative session, and I can explain that with more depth, because I'm assuming we'll probably be in closed deliberative session before June or July. So
All good. And the question of who chairs the body once I step back is an open question that we don't need to answer until that time. So
okay,
That's right.
we can deal with it then.
okay.
Yeah, I think really the bigger question, and I'll follow up, is whether or not, Elsie, you're interested in taking on a permanent seat rather than an alternate seat with the
Yeah.
board.
That would, that would
Never.
Lifetime
Forever.
Yeah, I'm also not sure when my term is up, but I would be
Right.
interested in that.
Yeah, I'll reach out to everybody just to, as we get closer to that June meeting, to see if people are still interested in serving, and about the roles for those whose terms are expiring. So, okay, I think that is, unless there was anything else on that, I think
No,
that's.
we're on to item 7, other business. Any other business?
I don't believe I have anything specific, other than if there's updates on any projects that we've discussed that you all want to know about or talk about. There's still some lawsuits happening that are making their way through the courts slowly. The appeal on 379, 381 Main Street, that project, I believe that was the last meeting you all had, was hearing that appeal. That was not reappealed then. The appellants were, I guess, comfortable with the decision that you all rendered and what was provided by the applicant, so that did not get appealed to the E-Court. So the applicant is going to be working through the conditions of that approval to meet that, and then to issue zoning. Otherwise, I think things are fairly on track, other than our next meeting will be May 19th at this point. So please mark your calendars, as we will have a meeting.
Eric, I was just at a presentation on housing in Vermont, and Winooski was held up as the gold standard for promoting affordable housing goals through zoning. So good job.
Well, I definitely cannot take the credit for that. I think that's been something that the city leadership and past boards and commissions have a large hand in, as well as the residents themselves. So I for sure cannot take credit for that. You all should be.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because having a ZA that is willing to work with applicants and get them in the right lane and actually take their calls and work collaboratively towards something that is compliant is not a universal feature in Vermont municipalities.
I will agree with you there. As I just have these discussions with applicants, they do tend to say the same thing. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. And any city updates?
The only thing I would mention is that the city staff we finally have hired a new HR manager who started last week. Jesse Ackery is his name. So he's been in for about a week, doing a great job. And our new city manager will start on May 16th. So we are excited for that transition to happen as well. And just for your all information, if you need to, Wendy Harrison, who was our interim city manager, her last day was on Monday, this past Monday. So John Rauscher is our public works director, is acting as city manager until Elaine starts. Right. So if you have any issues that you need to talk with the city manager about, it would be John Rauscher at this point.
Right.
So
hope no big issues happen during waking windows that need the city manager's attention.
That's
right before the new one starts.
That's for sure. So, just one other item, the city council, I believe they scheduled it officially, May 21st. We are doing our annual policy and priority strategy setting meeting. It's a Saturday. It's typically when council gets together to talk basically to talk through what they want to prioritize for the year. It is a public meeting, so that will be warned. Public is encouraged to attend or welcome to attend. But as I mentioned, it is a Saturday. We generally do it from like a 9 to 1 time frame, so there'll be more information on that coming out as well.
Cool. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, abstaining, we are adjourned.
Great, thank you all
Thanks,
very
everybody.
much.